Before the devastating arrival of the Black Death, 14th century Europe was a vibrant, interconnected continent bustling with trade, growing cities, and burgeoning populations. Yet, underneath this prosperity, a hidden threat was brewing. The origins of what would become the deadliest pandemic in history lie far to the east, in the vast steppes of Central Asia. Here, the Yersinia pestis bacterium, carried by fleas living on marmots and other rodents, found a new host: humans. From these remote regions, the plague began its relentless march. Carried along the ancient Silk Road, a network of trade routes connecting east and west, it hitched rides with merchants, soldiers, and their cargo, slowly but surely making its way towards the populated centers. By 1346, the plague reached the Crimean city of Kaffa, a Genoese trading post. When Mongol forces besieged by the disease themselves catapulted infected bodies over the city walls, the plague found its gateway to Europe. From Kaffa, it spread rapidly via merchant ships. The symptoms were horrifying. Victims developed painful, swollen lymph nodes called buboes, typically in the groin, armpits, or neck, accompanied by fever, chills, and internal bleeding. Death often followed within days. Cities with their dense populations and poor sanitation became epicenters of death. The plague swept through urban centers like Florence, Paris, and London with terrifying speed, claiming lives indiscriminately. The sheer number of dead overwhelmed all existing systems. Graveyards filled rapidly, forcing the creation of mass graves. Priests, doctors, and grave diggers themselves fell victim, leaving communities without spiritual or medical guidance. While cities were hit hard, the plague spared no one. It spread to rural villages, carried by fleeing urban dwellers or infected livestock, decimating peasant communities and leaving vast tracts of farmland deserted. Fear and panic gripped the continent. Society began to fray as people struggled to comprehend the invisible killer. Trust eroded, and a profound sense of helplessness pervaded everyday life. Many, particularly the wealthy, fled the plague-stricken cities, inadvertently carrying the disease with them to new areas. Others, out of desperation, abandoned their families and homes, further fracturing social bonds. In their desperate search for meaning, some turned to extreme religious devotion. Groups like the Flagellants emerged, believing the plague was divine punishment, and publicly whipped themselves to atone for sins. Tragically, fear often led to scapegoating. Jewish communities, already marginalized, were falsely accused of poisoning wells and spreading the disease, leading to horrific persecutions and massacres across Europe. With an estimated 30 to 50% of Europe's population wiped out, the economic landscape was irrevocably altered. A drastic shortage of labor meant that surviving peasants and artisans could demand higher wages and better conditions. This newfound leverage severely weakened the traditional feudal system. Lords dependent on peasant labor found their power diminished as serfs gained the ability to leave their lands for better opportunities. Abandoned farms and unworked fields led to agricultural decline. While some areas benefited from fewer mouths to feed, the overall disruption risked widespread famine in the immediate aftermath of the plague. The authority of both monarchies and the church were shaken. Kings struggled to maintain order and collect taxes from a depleted populace, while the church, unable to explain or stop the plague, saw its spiritual authority questioned. The loss of educated clergy, skilled administrators, and experienced leaders created a leadership vacuum. Governments and institutions struggled to function effectively, contributing to widespread chaos and instability. The economic and social upheaval directly fueled peasant revolts, such as the Jacquerie in France and the Peasants' Revolt in England. These uprisings, though often brutally suppressed, were clear signs of a society demanding change. The plague irrevocably shifted the balance of power. The surviving common people, now more valuable, gained greater bargaining power, paving the way for a gradual erosion of aristocratic dominance and the rise of new social structures. Demographic recovery was slow and uneven. It took centuries for Europe's population to reach pre-plague levels. This sustained low population had long-term effects on settlement patterns, resource use, and land management. Paradoxically, the labor shortage spurred innovation. To compensate for fewer workers, new technologies and methods in agriculture, manufacturing, and construction emerged, laying foundations for future industrial advancements. The pervasive presence of death profoundly influenced art and culture. The danse macabre motif, depicting death leading people from all walks of life in a dance, became a popular artistic and literary theme, reflecting the universal impact of the plague. The questioning of traditional authorities and the contemplation of mortality also contributed to the intellectual ferment that would eventually lead to the Renaissance. People began to look beyond divine explanations and towards human potential and reason. While perhaps not toppling empires overnight, the Black Death severely weakened existing power structures. The Byzantine Empire, already in decline, faced further depopulation and economic strain. The Holy Roman Empire's decentralized nature was exacerbated and its influence waned. The plague accelerated the decline of older, more centralized authorities and opened the door for the rise of new nation-states. The Black Death was more than just a devastating pandemic. It was a cataclysmic event that reshaped the course of human history. It broke down old orders, ignited social change, and from the ashes of unimaginable loss, laid the groundwork for a new Europe.